Hey there, friends. Welcome to this video lesson. It's good to have you guys join me once again. And today I want to continue talking about the commandments. Last session, we kind of kicked off this second half of the year talking about the 10 commandments and talking about why they're important, how they help us. And if you remember, what we talked about was that the commandments are given to us by God to help us to love God, neighbor, and ourselves better. It kind of gives us a roadway, a pathway, a clear guided pathway to love as God wants us to love. And that's a beautiful gift to have. And although sometimes we as humans might struggle with rules, they're good when rules come from someone who loves us, especially someone like God who loves us more than we love ourselves. Those rules are ultimately for our well-being and help us to love others much more effectively. And so now you might remember that we talked a little bit about the first and second commandments. The first commandment is to not have any other gods besides the one true God, and not to worship any idols, to only worship the one true God. And the second commandment is to not use God's name in vain. And both of those commandments, when we read the commandments, when God gives those commandments to Moses, we see that God spends a lot of time on just the first three commandments. And part of the reason for that is because it's super important that we understand those first couple of commandments so that we keep God as a priority in our life, that we give God the role as king of our lives. Because if we do that effectively, all of the other commandments become much easier. Following God's will is so much more simple when we give him the authority to rule our lives, to rule over us, because he is a good and loving God who desires what is best for us. And so those first two commandments are super important, that we give God that place as the one God of our lives. So we don't give idols, even if they're even simple idols of today. Most of us aren't going out and worshiping golden cows, but some of us might have idols of sports. Maybe sports are the idol that we give priority in our life, or maybe it's school or money or popularity, video games, whatever. None of those things are necessarily bad in and of themselves, but they shouldn't have priority in our life. And when they take priority, that's what makes them an idol. And so we have to be careful of that so that we give the respect and honor to God in our lives so that our life is shaped through that relationship. And the third commandment is what we want to talk about today. And it flows directly from those first two. When we follow the first two commandments, we give God honor and respect and give him priority in our lives. And on the third commandment is to keep the Sabbath day holy, or to keep the Sabbath rest holy. And that's important. But in order to understand that, we first have to talk about what the Sabbath is. And so the Sabbath comes from the very beginning of time. When God, during creation, God spends 6 days on creation. Of course, we have to understand when we talk about creation, did God necessarily actually create the world in 6 days? No. It's the creation story is a poem. It's written poetically to help us understand the complicated realities of creation and draw some really important truths from that. And so what we get from those 6 days of creation is that God took care, and there was a process in which he created. And at the very end of it, he gave man and woman. He placed man and woman here on earth and gave us dominion over that. And so we have a very unique relationship with God as his last part of creation. And that's wonderful. And then on the seventh day, he rests. God rests on that seventh day. And now, why does he do that? Is it because he spent 6 days and was so tired, and he spent 7 days forming the earth and putting the stars in the sky and the sun and the moon, and filling the seas with water and putting all the creeping crawling things on the earth and the birds in the sky, and that was a lot of hard work, and so he needed a day off? No, that's not it. God is an eternal being. He doesn't need rest. God could create for all of eternity and never need a break. But he takes rest, and he takes a day of rest, and he informs us to take that day of rest as an example for humanity, because God doesn't need rest, but we do. Rest is an important part of being human, because we're just that. We are human. And so we are not eternal, or we are not we're not like God in that we can just go on endlessly. We need to take a break in order to be the best version of ourselves. And that's exactly why God does it. He takes a break so that we know that we should take a break. Because of course, if we have a good relationship with God, we want to be like him. And so if he takes a break, then that should tell us, hey, we should take a break. And Jesus did this too. He would go off and pray on his own and take a break and spend specific time with God. He would go to the temple and spend some time resting with God. And now again, Jesus didn't have to do that, but he does it to give us an example, to lead by example. And rest is important for us to be healthy and productive human beings. Rest helps us ultimately to be the best version of ourselves when we do it right. Not everything that we think of when we think of rest might help us to become the best version of ourselves, but good, healthy, holy rest helps us to become the best version of ourselves. And again, God gives us the 10 commandments so that we can love God, neighbor, and ourselves better. And so that he can lead us to love others and ourselves more effectively. And so how does the third commandment help us to do that? How does that day of rest on the Sabbath, that seventh day of rest, how do we use that to love others better? Well, Sunday is ultimately given to us as a day to get focused and to get back to anything that maybe the busyness of life has gotten us off track from. We live in a very busy world these days, busier than possibly ever before. I mean, there's school, there's sports, there's friends, there's homework, there's family obligations, there's work and jobs, and you're never able to even escape most of those things because we're constantly have a way to get in touch with those parts of our lives in our pocket. We have a cell phone where people can constantly get in touch with us, so we can never really escape the busyness of our lives, or at least it seems that way. So more than ever before, it's important that we understand the role of rest in our lives and how rest helps us to love others. And many of you have probably experienced exactly why rest is important for us to love other people, because many of us have probably had that day where we're having a bad day. Maybe we just didn't get enough sleep. We're burnt out. We're tired. Something didn't go as planned at school, or, whatever it might be. And then someone who is totally unaware of this, or someone who, especially in times when someone's trying to help us through that, maybe we lash out in anger. Maybe a parent reaches out and asks us what's going on, and we shut them out and get angry at them, or a friend does something that they don't know is going to hurt us, and because of that tiredness, because we've been worn down, we lash out at them and damage that relationship. That's a part of being human. Sometimes we get burnt out and kind of just we're out and we need rest. And so on Sundays, we can use that day to rest and do everything that God is calling us to do better. And so on Sundays, we should focus on resting in a way that helps us to love God, our neighbor, and ourself. So how can we rest and love God on Sunday? Well, the main way the church asks us to rest and to focus on our relationship with God on Sundays is going to Mass. That's the reason that the church asks us to go to Mass every Sunday, even when we're busy, even when we have, a hockey tournament, or, we have work that morning. The church asks us to set aside one day where we go to Mass and spend an hour with God. We spend an hour in prayer in the Mass. And of course, it's way more helpful as well to be praying every day, but especially on that day of rest, on Sunday, to spend some time with God in a special way at Mass and to receive him in the Eucharist. That's the best way we can rest and refocus our relationship with God every single week. And then our neighbors. On Sunday, we should spend some time specifically with our closest neighbors, our family. Sunday should be a day that we can spend some time with our family, especially when we hopefully don't have the busyness of the rest of the week, when parents are home from work and we're home from school, and hopefully we haven't procrastinated on too much homework, so we're able to crawl out of the cave of our bedroom and spend some quality time with our families. And I mean quality time. It's great to be able to spend time, watching a movie or, playing video games or things, but really to spend some quality time in enjoying the company of your family, and then also your friends and other neighbors that may be important in your life. Being able to spend some time with those people that play an important role in your life, and being able to refocus on those relationships that one day a week, despite all the busyness of the other six. And then we have to spend some time resting and refocusing on ourselves, because we have to keep ourselves healthy. And so rest is a good thing. And rest is going to look a little bit different for all of us. Maybe resting means just, maybe on Sunday you just need to take a nap. Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's spending some time with, your siblings or something, playing video games. Maybe it is watching a movie with your family. Maybe it's going for a run. Whatever it is, it's important for us to take that rest, because it helps to keep us mentally and physically healthy. And ultimately spiritually healthy by doing all three of those, by refocusing on God and our neighbor and ourselves on that day of rest on Sundays. But then that, of course, begs the question, what's the difference between rest and laziness? Because it's a fine line sometimes. And of course, God calls us to rest, but he doesn't call us to laziness. And the difference is that rest is ultimately productive. It helps us to become more effective those other 6 days of the week. So as humans, we require rest. We need good sleep at night. We need to be able to relax from the constant busyness and constant movement of the day. That's an important thing for us. No doubt about it. No one who is truly successful in life will insist that getting a good night's sleep isn't necessary. Every successful person in the world knows how valuable a good night's rest is. And every saint will tell you how important a good Sunday's rest is. So rest is important because it's productive. It helps us to become better people. It helps us to be more productive in loving others later on that week. Laziness is the opposite. Laziness is self-serving. Laziness means that we ignore our obligations, we ignore our responsibilities, and instead do something else, do something that's unproductive. And so that's the difference. Rest helps us to become better. Laziness, is certainly in the long term, makes us worse. And so we have to be careful of understanding that line between rest and laziness, and have restful, good, healthy, and holy, restful Sundays, so that we become the best people we can be. We have to have good, healthy, and holy, restful Sundays so that we become the saints that God calls us to be. Amen. Thank you guys for joining me this week. And I hope you guys enjoy learning about these commandments and learning why God gives us these 10 commandments. And we're just going to keep, as the weeks go on, we're going to keep talking about them as time goes on. So thanks. Bye.